a playlist original.
I guess like the simplest question is like, what were your expectations for it, I guess, and then what were you mostly pleased with what you got? And I am curious what prevented you from going like perfect score with it on Letterboxd, and why I
Maybe,
got like
yeah.
the
I mean,
nothing wrong with a 4.5 out of 5, by the way.
no, I mean, that's a pretty like incredible score as far as I'm concerned. I guess I'll start with expectations. Like, I expected it to be like a grand production and like really great production values, like well acted, well cast, shot well, because that's just like hallmarks of Ryan Coogler's films, especially like the last few that he's done have been big budgeted, large casts, like pretty prestige IPs, like with the Black Panther 2 movies he did there. And how many of the Creed movies did he direct? Did he just do one or did he do two?
He only
Oh,
directed
three.
the first one. No, he
That's
directed the
it.
first one.
Okay.
Yeah, and then was a producer
Right.
on the other two.
Yeah. And I know, like, I think ultimately, like, if I had one expectation, it would be that his direction of Michael B. Jordan would be like top notch. They've worked together on several films now, and I knew I would go in loving that role. And I haven't, I guess, Michael B. Jordan. I'm trying to think of like the last thing I would have seen him in, but this is just
I
kind of a
think
role
Creed
I
3
was,
would have been the last thing I
which
watched.
which I didn't see, but I was, yeah, that would have been probably his most recent role. But I was excited to see something in like a period piece like this, so I was pretty excited for that and like delivered. It's weird. Like I didn't have low expectations by any means, yet my expectations were like highly surpassed. Like I guess just like
Yeah.
how like every filmmaking aspect came together in this movie. Like I guess the score was one thing that I really took notice of. Like that was incredible. I can't wait to get my hands on like that original
Yeah.
soundtrack was awesome. Um, Very musically inspired movie too, which I really didn't see coming. Particularly
Yeah.
like the blues, and then there's that obviously that sequence that you alluded to earlier in the video that or the
Yeah.
episode that a lot of people are buzzing about, which I was kind of waiting to see what that would be because I did read a snippet of your Letterboxd review. I think it was yours that
Yeah.
mentioned that sequence with the music, and I was like, hey, I'm interested to see if I'll pick up on that when it happens. And sure enough, after we get that during this huge tracking one take throughout the juke, I was like, oh, okay, this is definitely something special that like elevates itself throughout the movie. Like a lot of amazing sequences, but this was really like where the camera work got the most immersive and
Yeah.
impressive and was just incredible. But I'll let you chat a little bit about
Well,
what you liked about it.
apparently that scene alone it took months to map out, I guess, and then they did it all in one day. It was like a big one long day thing to get that right. I know everyone's been talking about that scene, and I don't know if people are sick of people talking about it because people who are even like seeing it just throughout the weekend. That's the one thing they keep referencing is that I mentioned that I thought it was like one of the best sequences I've seen all year, and I had to correct myself. It was one of the best sequences
Yeah,
I've seen like in years, like plural. It was
right.
just really I was completely thrown by it and wasn't expecting it, and almost had to adjust to what I was seeing and hearing because I'm listening to the dialogue, right, and it's harking back to the dialogue at the beginning, talking about how like that music kind of transcends time and all that stuff, right? And they mentioned
Right.
that at the beginning, and I'm listening to that, thinking that okay, I kind of got the feeling that this is where we're gonna like see the vampires and all that stuff, and like that is what's calling them over there. What I
Right.
didn't expect was the whole switch and like decades of music within the scene, and that is what
I thought
like
that was so
completely threw
cool and
me.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I was expecting one thing, and I know we did get that eventually at the end of the scene where like that is what kind of calls them over uh to the juke joint. But I was just so impressed by how off guard I was by it and how
Hmm.
creative it was, and um legit had goosebumps like for a long time after that scene was over.
Yeah.
And it
Um,
was just, and to me, it's a testament of like his talent as a filmmaker and like what he's able to do. I mean, this is a guy who started with like a $900,000 budget for Fruitville Station and has been able to, he works with a lot of money with the two Black Panther movies. He knows what to do with what he's
yeah.
given, and clearly is inspired by people he is that he looks up to and respects. I mean, there's a reason why he said that not only did he talk to Christopher Nolan about doing the stuff with the IMAX cameras for this movie, but he also, I guess, talks to him regularly about like just life and just about his process and like just being in the position that they're both in as filmmakers. And like I honestly, I mean, someone broke down even his Rotten Tomato scores for his movies. I was like, I don't know why maybe we aren't talking about him in the same breath as some of these other filmmakers, and I think we probably should at this point. I don't know what else he needs to do to prove himself. But I certainly think, I mean, I had a friend that said that mentioning him in the same breath as Nolan is a bit much, but I mean, I don't think some people would be that would. A lot of people wouldn't scoff at that either. Like watching what he's done from his start to now, it's been like a really kind of spectacular evolution of like his filmmaking abilities. And I honestly think this is the best thing he's done. Like,
I think so too. That's exactly what I came out of the theater thinking as well. Like, I haven't seen. Yeah, no, I think I've seen most of his movies, the exception being Wakanda Forever. And yeah, this was definitely my favorite. I think maybe like this is just me like spitballing here, and this is kind of how I perceive like directors like taking his MCU movies. I almost feel like those movies, yeah, do they count in his filmography? For sure. But I feel like when people talk about overall his filmography and contribution to film, I feel like MCU directors, like those movies, I think get overshadowed in the sense that they fall into such a larger pantheon of movies that they almost don't showcase the director as much as they showcase where that movie or story takes place in the broader MCU. So I feel like some people kind of like overlook sometimes like that, those movies, specifically the Black Panthers in Ryan Coogler's case, as movies of his, and they rather get looked at as MCU movies and not so much get praised for direction. And
so
that being said, like
a lot of people are looking at Fruitvale Station, Creed, in this, and then they kind of like not that they don't want to include the other two, but like it's they're
it's
part of a bigger
something different
cog in the machine, basically. Yeah,
that's kind of how I like or subconsciously like lump some MCU movies and like their directors and how they fit into that director's filmography. I almost like kind of unconsciously exclude them when I'm thinking about their filmography because like there's just so many different. It's not so much the director's creative endeavor as much as it is like the big Marvel studio product that is directed by the director. You know what I mean? And maybe that's maybe not everyone's perception of it. That's kind of how I look at it. So, but considering what he's done with those movies and his filmography in general, I definitely think that he had a really incredible evolution as a director, especially like you said. I didn't realize the Fruitvale Station budget was what it was, but I think that experience he had directing the Black Panther movies and Creed also being like a legendary IP as a Rocky spinoff absolutely lent some awesome experience that he was able to tailor for Sinners, specifically with like the cast that he's and the ensemble that he's juggling in this movie. So many characters in Sinners and how he's allocating the budget, because Sinners was no small feat either. 90 million, which I know by today's metrics is kind of middle of the pack, but that's still a lot of money. And he put every dollar, I think, on that screen. Not a dollar was wasted. It looks incredible.
Yeah, I told my brother that that is really like for a studio movie nowadays it's pretty low, and he was like, "That's low. That's like a lot of money." But like, but you know, I'm glad that they kept it low because of course, less pressure for it to be like extremely successful.
Right.
And, it doesn't have to. You get like a $200-300 million movie, then it's like you have to like count on like overseas markets to make this work. I'm not sure how well this movie is going to sell overseas. I know it opened to $63 million globally, and 48 of that came from here. I think it could expand more overseas, but I think it will be much more of a domestic box office hit rather than a global one.
Yeah,
and also the story is also very much like a
American story. You can't really blame like foreign markets for not necessarily being like that intrigued, but I think like I think like cinephiles from other countries and stuff would definitely, or like fans of Ryan Coogler's other movies will seek this one out. But yeah, definitely an American centered like storyline, but a pretty universal antagonist. I guess it's no secret it's a vampire movie, and that has its origins in Europe, so that might appeal. Like vampires as a movie monster would probably help broaden the appeal of this movie, maybe in other markets, but definitely at its core, I think it's an American movie.
Yeah. And
for American audiences.
was impressed because, like, it's hard to do the vampire mythology in a way that hasn't been done before, right? I mean, we've seen everything. I'm glad that the classic stuff was there. I thought they utilized the whole
Yes.
like they can't be invited in, they can't come in unless they're
I,
invited in thing. Was
such
they
a
used
small
that
detail that
really
I was
well.
so happy. Yes, I was glad they
Yeah.
included that.
And I glad that, when they had like the one character Annie, it made sense for her to be the one that understood, like, this is how we killed them, like, wouldn't stick to the heart, silver, garlic.
Right.
It was just a random person that was like, and I also like they didn't make a big
Yeah.
deal out of being like, oh, these are vampires. Like it was something that she was aware of, that she could explain, and it made sense that she was the one that explained what they wore, and it wasn't like just. I had a friend that thought it'd be more interesting if it was a surprise to them that this is what was attacking them, and I guess that could work too,
Okay.
like in some way.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an interesting way to kind of, because like because honestly, at the end of the day, the movie isn't. I mean, I guess it depends on like your interpretation of it. It's not so much a vampire movie, and that's why,
No.
and maybe that's why it takes almost an hour for that to kick in, and why it's not really the main focus of the movie, which is why you get all that like hour of build up with the characters more so than anything to kind of set up the setting and the characters and their different relationships. That was more important than the vampire aspect of the story.
Yeah.
Which is, so I'm glad they didn't like make it a big deal to kind of give you this kind of like big backstory myth on like why they're there and why they exist. I think they gave just enough. I like the idea that not only were they feeding on these people to like kind of stay alive and all that, but like the idea that they were doing it to take and borrow and appropriate. There's a
Like
lot about racial
assimilate
appropriation
them.
in it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and the fact that they were called over by Sammy's music, and like that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted to really take in,
Right.
and also like the whole banter between them when they're trying to get invited in. Um, I honestly believe in their own twisted like state of mind that they were trying to create their own brand of equality. Like, hey, we can all be included, but it's more fun on this side if you do it this way. That's what kind of
Right.
like felt like a little bit.
Yeah.
So I like that it wasn't like a straightforward story about like racism or anything like that, but I did like the kind of metaphor of them feeding on you was more than just like
Right.
sustenance for them. It had more to do with like taking in all the knowledge and all that stuff too. Like when you're talking about like taking their memories and all that, like it's the scene where he's
Exactly.
what talking in Chinese to the one lady when her husband's telling her to come outside, and basically because he's fed on the husband now, he can like speak that language. I thought that was like
Right.
such a cool way to show like how
Super
they can
cool.
adapt. And yeah, so I mean,
Um,
there's a lot of message in the movie, but I thought it really worked as like a fun allegory for so many different issues. And you could argue whether or not he maybe bit off more than he can chew, but there's a lot to take in and do. But I think for the most part, he was successful though.
oh, I totally think it was too. And like I think a rewatch would really help kind of soak in some of those finer details about like some of the other broader messages in the movie. But one person, like just taking it a step further about the whole assimilation of the vampires of the main characters and like the cultural appropriation, just expanding on that a little bit. I heard somebody put it like that sequence in particular where Jack O'Connell and all of the other, like once they have that big horde of vampires outside, they do that Irish jig
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing. Someone kind of pitched it as like an allegory for other, specifically like rock music being appropriating jazz and blues, and
yeah.
how that was an allegory for that, and how that is like the fundamental or the foundation of rock and roll music, and rock and roll is like very much like identified as like white person's music, and it wouldn't exist without blues, and there's a whole conversation to be had there, and I think that scene really lends to that, and I thought that was super creative and a really interesting way of like getting that message across in like a very intellectual way. And I appreciated
Yeah.
more of like what that movie had to say about culture, specifically black culture and its appropriation, than I did about
Yeah.
any other part of it. I thought it was just really, really impressively articulated throughout the movie, I guess. So, and Jack
Yeah.
O'Connell too, I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention or if he wasn't featured in the marketing, but like he just appeared out of nowhere for me, and he was a standout too. I was really happy with his performance and him as like the just a really charismatic role for him. And I've seen him in a few things, and like that just seemed unlike anything
So
else I'd seen him in.
I want to be perfectly honest. When I realized when I watched him in the movie that I don't think I've seen him in a lot, and I
Okay, yeah.
feel like I kind of was like I thought I was like, how did I miss him and stuff? Like then I looked up his
He's
filmography.
in
He's
some
been in
really good stuff.
quite a few
Yeah.
things, and I thought that character was really interesting, and he was really charismatic in the role. Like he was.
Yeah.
The cool thing about like most vampire movies is that those characters are supposed to be. It's a whole seduction thing, right? They're trying to lure you over to like what they are, what they want, and what they want you to want.
Right.
And those three characters, like when he turned the other two, they became like when I was watching it, I was like, they do seem fun. like when you're watching it, like they don't seem like all that bad.
Right.
So I think he played that part of the role really, really well. But then also he was charismatic and like almost likable in certain moments, but then he could
Mm.
turn on the dime and just be like pretty evil, which I thought was
Yeah.
like pretty like interesting too. And like I kind of if I guess there's anything, it's not like a big gripe. I would have liked more of him or even like them or learning more about them. Um,
Right.
which I guess is why Ryan Coogler owns the copyright. That was the deal he made with Warner Brothers, is that he owns the copyright and whatever he decides to do with it is up to him. They don't have any control over that. But that does
Okay.
lend if it wants to become a franchise or an IP, it can. I know some people are against the whole prequel sequel thing with it, but I would be really interested to see like those characters too, and like more of them, and like especially like where his character kind of started from, came from. Like I thought
Yeah.
that I thought he was in it enough, but like I did want more of him. I don't know if that was just because I thought the character was just interesting, or what Jack O'Connell was doing performance wise was just really interesting, and just wanted more scenes with him. But
Yeah. I think there would be, if we were to get a prequel, I would like it to have to see and explore a little bit more of like, well, actually, I'm going to expand this point, but vampires side of things. I'd like to see
yeah,
Jack O'Connell and his sort of involvement with the Native Americans that are chasing him at his
yeah,
character's production. That was super neat, and I think there was some fertile ground there. But I said in my letterbox review that like if you had to completely remove the aspect of like the vampires and the horror elements of this movie, I was intrigued enough and would like a prequel just featuring Michael B. Jordan's characters alone. Like I think there was a
yeah,
that story as like just like a empire, like a entrepreneurial brothers and like their experiences in Chicago working and the blood money they acquired. I think that would be super neat and awesome and worth exploring. I think there was a lot in this movie to love beyond the genre mashing, but I think it worked great as like just a period drama and as a period horror. There's a lot of different things to appreciate in this
yeah.
movie, which I guess kind of ties into my expectations of it. I just didn't expect it would blend those things so well.
Yeah, I was surprised too. And like I said earlier, I was so immersed in the actual like first hour that built up everything that
Yeah.
I was really like, I was like, where are, oh, the vampires haven't showed up, because there's just so much interesting, like watching them like put this place together, watching all those pieces come together when like they're kind of recruiting everyone, like Delroy Lindo's character, getting him so he could play, and then getting like the guy that
Yes.
basically is like Cornbread being like the bouncer kind of
Cornbread. Yeah.
muscle at the front door. Yeah. So I thought all that stuff was interesting. And I also thought, so I did not know this until the movie opened. Hailee Steinfeld's casting is more than just like her being like a decent name to put in the movie.
Mm.
I had no idea that her father is Jewish. Her maternal grandfather is half Filipino and half African American descent. So it was actually a big deal for her to like, for her, she said,
Okay.
to do this, because like she never gets to play those parts of herself. And
Okay.
because I full on just thought she was white. It's all
Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
honesty,
So did I.
and was completely thrown by like, because she's doing these interviews. I was like, what's she talking about? And like I was like, and I looked it up, and yeah, she's a melting pot. I think so. Like
Yeah, I guess so.
her casting, I guess when her and Ryan Coogler talked, that was very important that she wanted to learn so much more about herself, and that she said that she did doing the movie, and that's why it was so important for her to do it. She proved herself as an actress when she was like 14, I think, right? When she did True Grit, she got nominated for an Oscar for that back in
That's
the
right.
day.
Yes.
And I know she's popped up in like that Hawkeye series. She's in the MCU. She's in Pitch Perfect. Um, she's never really getting an opportunity to do something fully adult, and I think this was like the first time she's done that, like
And it
probably in
did
her
come
career.
across that way. Yeah.
And I thought she was good. I thought she held her own. I thought. What did you think of her overall, like in the movie?
I thought she was great. Sometimes I forget what I've seen her in before, and I think I've really noticed her career more like when she joined the MCU. Like I did up until a few days ago. I forgot I had followed her for years. Like I saw True Grit very soon after it came out. I've had that movie for years, seen it. Kind of forgot about that part of her career and how young she was when she got into acting. But I think I really noticed her talents the most in this. And I guess I hadn't really seen a newer because I haven't seen any of her MCU performances. But yeah,
Yeah,
she was pretty impressive. I liked her a lot. She sold it really well. And then I thought it was interesting that her character mentions that she has African American lineage. I found that would kind of be bold if they cast an actress in that role
yeah,
who's like the character had that and she didn't. So I was kind of expecting to hear that she did have some sort of
yeah, and that's why I
like
looked
African
it up
American.
because I was
Yeah, yeah,
like, would they
yeah.
dare? Would they? I was like, would they dare cast an actress that didn't have that in her at all? Because like that'd be a really
Right. Especially like Ryan Coogler. I wouldn't expect him to do that. So I was like, oh, that's interesting to know about her because you would never know looking at her. But
yeah, and
no,
like
I
yeah,
thought
I
she was
thought
great.
she's great. She's 28. She's not even 30 yet. That's what
Oh my
blows my
gosh.
mind too.
Yeah.
And she's had quite the career, right? So starts really young. She's had a pop career. She's had like hit songs. I mean, she's been in a lot of different types of music and movies and stuff like that. Like it's interesting, like what her career is kind of done. And I think
I
that is
didn't know
interesting
she was a singer.
that you said too that you kind of forgot about that stage for her career because like she's had like a lot of stages in a very
Yeah.
short amount of time. But yeah, I mean, like she's in Pitch Perfect 2 and 3. Like she's got to show off her voice in that, and uh, she's a pretty talented. And then of course, she does the voice of in the Spider Verse movies. She's Gwen
Gwen.
Stacy.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
and she was in Bumblebee. Like she's been in a lot of like stuff that. But I think this was kind of like come to Jesus for a lot of people who saw her in this. They were like, oh,
Hmm.
she's all
She's
grown
not a
up.
kid anymore. Yeah,
Yeah, good
exactly.
like good because she was doing and saying some stuff, and there's that like
Hmm.
have people
Yeah,
like clutching their pearls a little bit.
yeah.
But yeah,
I'd
she
like
was
to
quite.
see like a prequel with her and Michael B. Jordan's character,
Yeah,
like
I think that was
over
interesting
and
too
yeah.
that they set up so much like history with all of them, right? With and with between like Stack and her, and then like Smoke and Annie, and then the whole thing with the kid and all that.
Hmm.
There's a lot of history that we don't really necessarily get to see, but you get to hear about it and hear them talk about. And in a
Yes,
lesser movie, I would have been like, I feel shortchanged by that, and it feels like you didn't really like develop it enough. But I
yes,
think because it was so well written that I was like, I'm intrigued to learn more, and I'm not really mad that it's not all there.
yes. And we
But
spent
like,
enough time with the characters to actually give a shit about some of those like just mentioned subplots. Whereas, like you
yeah,
said, in a lesser work, these things would have been mentioned and then not given the room to breathe that this movie gave it. Like we have a solid like hour 15 of just character development before the main story gets underway, and like I think that pays dividends for this movie.
yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I know that I've seen some people, even the ones that liked it, that thought that buildup is a little slow. They want to get to the bloodletting, that like get to that right away.
Of
But like
course.
I like a slow burn. I like anything that like if it's interesting, I don't care if it takes a while to get to where it needs to go. And
Exactly.
like you said, like I could watch I could have just watched a movie about how they were just trying to open this juke joint together. And
Yeah.
I also love the notion like, and it was really interesting to have Jack O'Connell's character say it to them, but what they really wanted from that juke joint is to have something that they own and that where they could feel free to have it and have a place where like all of their people could go and like from like all the labor that they've been like putting in and like just have a place to go relax and have fun and all that. And when
Mm.
Jack O'Connell's character explains to them like how that deal was done, and like it was just like you were never ever going to be free like the way that this was like presented to you because like you got pretty
Right.
much got duped. But I can give you that freedom though. Like if you want it, like this is the only real way to be free. I just love like what that meant like in the like screenplay wise, like how they were like you try to do this the right way, and you know and it didn't work out. But like, here's a way for you guys to be free if you want. Like, that's that notion of freedom. Like, you can actually take that in a general story about like race relations during that time. But then also, I think it's so cool with like genre movies like this, where you can also adapt it and throw it into like a world of like vampires and horror, and that would make sense. Like, where it makes complete another sense. And I think horror movies have always been good, maybe more than most genres, at being good social commentary on deeper issues, and that like is what this movie is, I think. And yeah, you see that in like Candyman and stuff like that too, where that's more than a movie about like a kind of boogeyman that's like haunting these people. It's a deeper story about community and like all in the past and all that stuff. So I was impressed with it. I love that it's an original idea. I love it.
That's my biggest takeaway. I love that this is an original movie that's this bold, this grand, this creative, and doing this well and getting recognition for it. And especially like from a director whose last several outings were, as acclaimed as they were and impressive as they were, they're IP films. So for him to come back and to do something like this that's completely original that he wrote and directed, I was like, that is like my biggest takeaway from Sinners, and I just so glad to see something like that, and to see it doing well ultimately is the best part.
Yeah, and like this is the first. They said it's the first horror film in 35 years to get an A cinema score. That is
that is crazy.
I didn't realize it was that long, but I was like, oh Jesus.
Do you remember the last one?
I don't know. I have to look at that. I wish I would have looked it up, but that's a long time ago. I mean, that's crazy that it's been that long. And the thing that there's been so many good horror movies that have come out in the last 35 years that, we're basically talking the difference between like an A- B+, that kind of thing. But like, it's been that long since we've had like an A. Also, I guess the biggest opening for original film since Nope, since Jordan Peele's Nope, which is also crazy to me. That just tells me more about the state of original films versus IP reboots, sequels. If it's been that long, and then this is like $48 million is a big opening weekend, but we've gotten so used to like big IPs having like 90 million, 100 million, $160 million opening weekends, that 48 million doesn't sound that huge, but like it is crazy to think that like the state of original movies where we're not getting so much of them, or they're not doing well enough to kind of achieve these kind of openings where it's like, oh, this is like the biggest opening for an original movie in this long. Like it feels, I mean, I'm glad it's there, but it does kind of give like a sad state of like what the movie industry is as far as
it's a reflection of the times that we live in right now, with how big legacy IP movies are right now in the industry, which I think we've let it get to a point where they're way more dominant than they should be, and hopefully I think the tide might be turning a little bit. They're still always represented best at award season, like come award season at different award shows, like original movies, that is, which is nice. But I think we're getting more and more, like gambles from studios putting money on the line for original stories. Like that haven't really been done in the last 10 or so years. So I think Sinners is probably one of the better examples of it. I think this will go on to be one of my favorites of the year. Certainly in the first half of the year, I'd put it right up there with it's bigger and bolder than Companion. I'd say I liked those movies. I still have like still kind of a toss up for like my list right now, 2025, but like those are the big standouts right now. But Sinners, I think, will have a lot of staying power come the end of the year. And I think there's I know it's early.
Legs too.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Now the thing is, let it have legs and don't announce like a VOD release date for it. Don't say like, oh, it'll be available digitally in 2 weeks. Let it like breathe and like enjoy its box office run. I mean, like it's probably going to do well through this weekend. I think we have The Accountant 2 coming out and Until Dawn, which actually both movies are getting really good reviews. There's room. I think there's room for it to like do really well, and I just hope they let it. Like, I know Warner Brothers, depending on the opening, will announce a digital release date within 2 weeks of movie opening, and that's too soon, I think. Because once people find out they can watch it at home. Now, I will say this: when it is announced that it's coming out on 4K, I will do whatever I can to.
I'm going to be picking this up. Yeah, pretty quickly for sure.
Because it looks like you said, cinematography on the movie was so great. It looks great. Is it Ludwig Göransson that does the music?
Yes, he did. Yes,
Works with
he
Nolan a
did.
lot too, right?
He won for Oppenheimer. I think that he has a really good chance for this, and then he's also composing the score for the Odyssey. So I think he's got a few big years. Yeah, this score was like one of my highlights of the movie. Honestly, the score was incredible.
Was there something that didn't quite work for you, or you didn't think it was like fully realized enough?
As far as like themes or plot points, no. One thing that again, it's not really so much the movie's fault, but it's something that I think that will benefit my rewatch is subtitles. Like there was some sequences where the sound mixing, it's something I don't think was bad necessarily. There's just a lot going on. There's definitely some thick accents that held me back from picking up on some of the dialogue in this movie that I think subtitles will really help me get a full picture of just what some characters are saying in certain points. I think like the sound mixing, like while there's like conversations happening during the musical performances in like the juke was actually handled pretty well. There wasn't much there that I was like, I'm not picking up on these conversations, but dialogue for sure would have been like one of those things that I think was that suffered a little bit for me. But again, it's not really like the movie's fault. That's just probably a me thing and maybe some of the sound design and just
I can see that.
Some performers' accents and stuff. Like just you're not going to get every single word, but a rewatch also might help me pick up on some of those things if I go see it in theaters again, which I hope I can make the time to do, but I'm not sure yet. But yeah,
I really like I think they sold the energy of the juke joint itself. Like, it made you feel like you want to. Someone compared it favorably to like the opening of like Babylon, and I thought that was like a really interesting like that.
Okay.
Like that kind of like, oh, you wish you were there kind of like party environment.
Yeah.
Like I kind of got that vibe a little bit too. They really do sell. I mean, there's a song that Jayme Lawson does, Pearline, that also before everything goes to shit. It's also like she's one where she's doing all the stomping on the stage and stuff. Like that was a really good performance number. I mean, it mixes so many different genre elements too. There, like you can easily say that there's like music, like straight musical elements in it, like movie musical elements in the movie too. Like he seemed like so inspired by so many different things, and I also loved his attention to detail. Like a lot of people made a reference to like the Chinese characters being in the movie and how like that was a presence and stuff that was known in like the Jim Crow South back then that a lot of projects ignore. So they love that he had them in the movie too for representation. I know there is someone on TikTok, and I can't tell if they're doing it for attention or if they're being serious. They didn't like the lack of Latino representation in the movie and said that the movie stole heavily from Dusk Till Dawn. Whether or not it's a joke or not, or if he's doing it for attention or clicks. A lot of people have framed that argument, and this is also the box office argument too. And I honestly don't know if it comes down to race or anything like that, but one thing I saw is when the movie came out over the weekend, a lot of people were impressed that it did well, but someone on X posted a picture of Black Bad Drop and Companion and said like, oh, can you also go support these other original movies? And I got spun into how come when like a predominantly black movie with a black director had this moment, you can't just let them have their moment. And I understand the sentiment. I don't know if that intention behind that person making that post about those four, because those are four really good original movies. I think the point there was like, hey, like these movies deserve to do well too. But I guess I can also see how it can be viewed as, why are you stealing this moment away from? Because truth be told, a lot of African American movies directed by African Americans don't have this moment a lot. So I get the point. And then someone else took the one about the Latino representation, and they were like, okay, well, again, you won't let us have our moment, but like it says like something along the lines like, none of you were there to go see Blue Beetle. You could have supported that and supported your own movies. And like it's great, this like weird argument. And then it's also the way Variety itself framed the box office opening weekend, and the way they wrote about that compared to how they wrote about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which actually opened in second when it came out. I didn't even know it opened in second. It had a pretty good opening weekend, but that opened in second. This opened in first. It had like a $41 million opening weekend compared to the 48 for this. It was not written to be like, oh, and same budget. Wasn't written to be like, oh, it's like a way. it's not. It wasn't written in the way it's like it's going to take a while for it to earn a profit. They talked about how successful and great it was, and with this, Variety wrote that headline is it was so negative to the point where Ben Stiller was the first one to really, I think, to share it. So like, this is not how you celebrate a movie that opens in this climate as an original film. You don't write a headline like this. And 2 hours later, Variety, so they got someone to write 5 reasons why Sinners did well at the box office. So you can tell they saw that and
course
tried to course correct.
yeah.
But I don't know what you think about like the bigger implications of like, you know, whether or not like certain things are being framed certain ways because of race, or is it are people just not really thinking when they like write these things, post these things? I want to think that's not the case. I don't want to think that
I have
Variety
trouble
is
believing like
trying to steal the thunder from.
I don't like innately think that is the intention, but obviously I have no idea. I'd be curious more to look at like, is this the same person or maybe like creative director that is, I don't even know if it's the right term, but like are the same people behind both articles or headlines or you know what I mean? Like maybe not if it's the same exact person that wrote both articles. Is it the same maybe head of that division that is kind of choosing how to articulate the success the box office performance of both movies? Then I would maybe be able to see like, is there a direct, you know, contradiction there, and that might maybe make me lean towards maybe there is a race related sort of agenda there. If you have like just two different people, 6 years apart, just having a different approach to those movies and their box office performance, not necessarily considering the similarities, then I think that might just be you know, not grasping at straws, but maybe drawing a conclusion that's not there. Either way, I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I would like to think that it's not intentional. And I think Ben Stiller, you know, kudos to him for pointing that out, because he's absolutely right. We should be celebrating original movies that are having this moment, and even better that it's, you know, from a predominantly African American crew and director, and that's, you know, they deserve that moment. So by all means, you know, appreciate Ryan Coogler and Sinners and go see it and support it. Cam actually messaged me and said that we should go see it together. And the reason that I did go see it with my girlfriend is because him and I, like, we get to go see a movie in theaters like maybe once every week or two. And I was leaning more towards Warfare. Like, we want to go see that in theaters together as well. So I was like, I'll go. Okay, I don't want to miss Sinners while it's in theaters, so I'll go take the opportunity to go see it with my girlfriend. I'm glad I did, but I would absolutely go back and see it again. And I'm sure that you would, if you find the time, would see it again as well. And like you said, see it again. Once I see that 4K on the shelf, like, I am getting it. Like, it was just an incredible. I want to own this movie already.
Yep. And also he had a female cinematographer on this too. I mean, they just made sure like they were covering all their bases on this movie. And also, I'd be remiss not to mention Miles Caton, who does play Sammy. This is his first, I think, movie.
That is even more impressive.
He's been known to be. He's worked in music for nearly all of his life. They said since he was 16. He had been performing with her, who the R&B, like she's a multifaceted like artist and stuff, and she was the one that encouraged him to audition for this. So he has her to thank for pushing him to do it. And I know we mentioned a little bit about the mid-credit scene. Did that work for you as far as like what, you know, like for the greater part of the story? Do you think it should have been in the movie itself, or was it fine putting it at the mid-credit point that can kind of show Sammy as an older person? And
I think it added like it was a nice like cherry on top scene, because like we do as the audience before that scene, we don't really understand. I'm confused as to which character of Michael B. Jordan's is the brother that is the vampire.
So Stack was the one that was a vampire, and in my mind, I was like, why didn't we see him die on screen? And then also I was like, why didn't we see Hailee Steinfeld die on screen? Because like, you know, two big, well, of course he's playing two roles, but like two big names, right? That
two big characters in the movie.
Characters, they would die on screen, and I was like, oh, that's weird that they didn't die on screen. So I thought it was interesting. That's why. So
I was like, I'm glad that we get a resolution to their characters, and the fact that Stack honors the promise that he made to Smoke to not touch oh, why am I blanking on the name?
Like, you have
Sammy. I was
to
gonna
go
call him
after
Miles.
Sammy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to let him live out his life and essentially choose if he, give him the option later in life. I thought that was like a pretty neat, something that I wouldn't expect from out of the vampire characters that we see earlier in the movie. Whereas like their goal is to assimilate everybody and just to
yeah,
completely kill everybody, like Hailee Steinfeld's character says it. So for them to kind of like uphold that promise to one of the characters to not go after one of these human characters, I'm like, that was pretty interesting to see them
yeah.
actually have some sort of like virtue. We don't see that a
And give
lot.
him the option too, because he gets closer to him and he basically is like, "Oh, you don't have that much time left." Like he basically like smells him and it's like,
Right.
you don't
Yeah.
have much longer, and gives him the choice. Like I can kind of free you from that. And he was like, no, he was fine with it. And I thought it was interesting that like because usually those characters are depicted as just so evil, right? Like they don't really give you the
Yes.
choice. Like, and the fact that he honored that, I thought that was interesting too. I also love that they kept that notion going of over space and time, that they are like appropriating different like images and like
Yeah.
like have him, and it's 92 at that point in the movie, and like to have him kind of dressed in like the whole like kind of early 90s like hip hop gear and have her also be
Yeah.
wearing that, like to kind of show that
I
they are
thought it was
still evolving that way. And
right.
I thought it was a nice little sad, poignant button on it, that where that kind of last interaction they had, like before all that stuff happened, like that was like the greatest night of my life, and I thought that was like such a
Yes.
nice like little like thing at the end of that, and they both kind of agreed on that, and I thought it was a really nice quiet moment in the movie that probably in other hands wouldn't have a moment like that. It would end on just pure carnage and that be it. And I thought it was like a really nice character thing at
Yeah.
the end, and I think it kind of was well placed in the mid credit scene. I mean, it was. I was surprised about
Well,
how long it was,
yeah,
but
me
like, but
too.
it was.
I think it worked better as a mid-credit scene than if it had been like a title card, like however many years later, directly after the scene before it. I think like having the audience think, okay, the movie's over, the story's done, get up, and maybe if they just played a little bit better, because I feel bad for the audience. I was on my way out of the theater, but I'm always slow to walk out on movies like that because I'm like, what if there's something? And luckily, I was
Yeah, yeah,
just at the doors when it came, and I darted right back. I was like, okay, I got to see this. Um,
yeah,
but and I think it felt more poignant that it, because along with the actual passage of time in the credits, I think that coincided with the passage of time between like the main events of the movie and when
yeah.
this mid-credit scene took place. And I think that like they complemented each other a lot. So I thought it was appropriate to be like a mid. I'm glad that it wasn't like all the way at the end credits, which I realized there wasn't a post-credit scene as well, of like that legendary blues player. What's his name?
Yeah, yeah.
Buddy.
Buddy guy, yeah, he plays
Buddy
like he
Guy.
plays like
Yes.
older Sammy. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm like,
yeah,
that's pretty cool. I wish I had stuck around, and if I had known, I would have stayed to see it. But I think that mid-credit scene was appropriately placed for sure.
yeah. I'm glad I didn't get up right away too, because like, well, sometimes during press screenings you do sit there a while. It's not like a regular like movie theater experience where everyone just
Okay.
gets up right away. Um, I'm glad we didn't either, because if I would have missed that, I would have been pretty bummed that
Yeah,
I had to hear about it later.
definitely.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. We both agree. Solid movie. I really loved it. I mean, I gave it a full 5 stars, and
Yes.
it probably right now is
I
probably the
can
best thing I've seen all year.
I would
So
absolutely agree. I can anticipate my score improving too on rewatch. I'll have to give it a shout. Hopefully I see it again later this year. It's the intention. But yeah, can't say enough good things about it. Can't sing its praises enough. It was genre matching, wicked, original story. Like glad to see Ryan Coogler have a big success like that. And
yeah,
yeah, if anybody's listening that
and
hasn't seen it, go see
go
it.
check it out. And I don't know where I stand on, like, I know we mentioned it a little bit, expanding on this and making more movies and doing prequels or sequels. I'm perfectly okay with what we got, and like and don't want to ruin it by them like sequelizing it or prequelizing it. But if he mapped out something for this IP that he thinks would be great, I wouldn't mind seeing it if it's something that he's really
Same.
thought out. And like, but I also don't want too much of a good thing, so I don't want them to ruin it. But like it,
I know. I
yeah,
want to believe in an industry where not every success needs to be milked and have, sequels, prequels, spin-offs. Like as
yeah,
much as that might work for some, I don't think we need it for every single movie that does well at the box office. But
yeah,
although that being said, like if it were to get announced, I wouldn't be displeased either.
Yeah, and I love how he pitched this and sold it. Like to get everyone interested in it. He already had Michael B. Jordan on it. Like he was like, he's going to be in it. He's going to lead it. There's no choice here. Also, you
Right.
don't have a choice in this. If you want this, I have to own the copyright. It was like all this stuff that he kind of said when he sold it, and like every studio wanted it, even despite that, because usually studios don't want to relinquish control over the copyright. They're like, no, you need
Right.
to, that's ours. Like we need to have that. But yeah, I respect what he was able to do and get done, and especially as
Nice.
like an African American filmmaker get that done. That's not easy.
Yeah.
So good on him, and looking forward to what he does next. I know. I think he's doing. He's working on his X-Files. I heard that
Oh,
he's doing
okay.
like
Huh.
some variation of that, which is like an interesting thing to be the next thing he does.
For
Going
sure.
from like an original thing to another thing that's big IP. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but yeah, I was impressed, loved it, and yeah, you guys should all go check it out and make sure it does. I mean, it's doing well, but like give like studios the incentive to be like, hey, let's bank on more original movies like this because we certainly need them.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm glad we were able to talk about it because we don't really always
Yes.
see the same movies on the same weekend.
Exactly. I know it's an emerging trend, and I'm glad we did. And you said I'm not sure what your take on The Accountant was. I was a big fan of that movie when it came out in 2015 or 16, and its sequel's
Yeah, I
coming
like
out
the
soon.
first one.
So I'm hoping to catch that out. And then Warfare as well. Hopefully by the time we sit down next, I'm not sure if you're planning on seeing it. I definitely hope I get to see it over the weekend. So maybe we could sit down and
Yeah, I
chat about
really
that
want to
one
see
next
it.
as well. Yeah.
I heard Warfare was very, very, very good. Very
Yes. Me too.
graphic, very graphic. In its depiction of war, but I mean, of course, it would be. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think we kind of got through like even though we had some good original movies, there was a little like kind of hump in the beginning of the year, the first part of the year,
For sure.
and I think we kind of got through that now. And like I think like the rest of the year seems promising for
Definitely.
movies right now. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I guess you can wrap us on up. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that concludes what didn't initially seem to be, but ended up being a dense episode of news coverage combined with a review of Sinners. And I like that we were able to fit both of those into one episode. So thank you guys,
Yeah.
those of you, whether you're here for news or whether you're here to listen to us break down Sinners. Hopefully, we didn't spoil too much for you. Go see it by all means, even if you listen to the whole episode. Uh, Nothing can compare to seeing that movie on the big screen. So I'm sure it comes with both of our endorsements. Go see Sinners in theaters. But in any case, this has been episode 235, slowly approaching that 250 mark of Back the Blockbuster. So we have that bicentennial episode coming up here soon, and we're very excited for that. So stay tuned, guys, to the socials where you guys can vote on our anniversary picks. We will have the picks for May coming up there soon for you guys to vote on. And we still have a couple anniversary, both of our picks for the month of May still to be recorded later this month. We've got the Virgin Suicides, and we've got, what is our other one? I know I just mentioned it to you off
American
screen.
American
American
Psycho.
Psycho, yes. How could I
Yeah,
forget?
American Psycho.
Very
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
forward to those.
yeah,
So stay tuned.
yeah.
Those episodes coming shortly. And if you guys are new to the show or if you haven't caught up, 234 other great episodes of the show to come check out wherever you guys get your podcasts. And if you're generous enough and you guys got the time, make sure to download Playlist Studio app wherever you guys, regardless of the device you have, they are our studio network, and you guys can find all episodes of Back to the Blockbuster on their app. So go give them some love. Thanks again, Playlists and Gaius. Always a pleasure. I will see you soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll see you on episode 236.